Are at the very end of the Masechta Kuf Tes Amid Beis, 2 lines from the bottom. The Gemara brought down a machlekes between Rabbi and Rabbi Yehuda as to whether Chunya's Beis Hamikdash in Mitzrayim was a Beis Avodah Zarah or was it built l'shem Shamayim. Now, either way, it's going to be aser. But so the Gemara had said that Rabbi Yehuda felt that it was not Avodah Zarah, and he brought a pasuk in Yeshaya that says, "B'yoyim ahu yeh mizbeach laHashem b'toich eretz Mitzrayim." That one day there will be a mizbeach in the house of Hashem b'toich eretz Mitzrayim. Look for Gemara. Right in there. B'toich eretz Mitzrayim, there's going to be a mizbeach for the house of Hashem. And by the way, it's a bit of a pella that there's going to be a nevuah about something that's aser. Okay. But that's what Yehuda said is a raya that it was built l'shem shemayim. So says the Gemara, Amalei Markashisha Breider Chizla Bayo, Rameir Haikrad Rav Yehuda Mai Avadle. What is Rameir who believes that it was Avodah Zarah? Where does he say this fulfillment was? When was there a fulfillment of a mizbeach in Mitzrayim l'shem shemayim? It wasn't this one. This was Avodah Zarah. So the Gemara says, look at the Tanya. This next Gemara is very strange. I'll be honest. Sometimes you have psukim in Tanakh where the very end of Kuf Tes Amid Beis. The Gemara, sometimes you have psukim in Tanakh that are borderline each word. It's hard to even translate, to even know what it's a reference to. So the Gemara says, La'achar maflase shel Sancheriv. When Sancheriv's army collapsed, Yatza Chizkiah went out, Umatza b'nei malachim, and he found princes, Goyish princes, I guess that were, they had made partnerships with Sancheriv, or they were part of Sancheriv's kingdom, and there were these generals or princes, whatever you want to call them, they were sitting in carriages of gold. All these Gemaras, by the Maral explains, B'derech Drush, but they were sitting in carriages of gold, Hediron, and basically Chizkiah made a deal with them. He said, I'm going to let you live as long as on condition you do tshuva, either goyim, but you do tshuva, and he stopped doing Avodah Zarah. Whatever this means, Hediron shalav Avodah Zarah, Shneimar b'yoyim, as the pasuk says, it will be on that day, Yochamesh Arim, there'll be 5 cities, Be'eretz Mitzrayim in Egypt, Medabrei Svais Canaan, that speak the language of the Jewish people, language of Canaan. V'nishbois Lashem Tzvakos, and they pledge allegiance to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So that was the reference. During that time period, those Goyish kingdoms made a Mizbeach for Hashem. Okay. They went to Egypt, and they built a Mizbeach, and that's what it's a reference to in the pasuk, the aforementioned pasuk. Now that we mentioned this pasuk, let's just finish up the pasuk. The pasuk says that one of the 5 cities that they went down and built, it says that in the pasuk that there'll be 5 cities in Egypt. One of the 5 cities in Egypt, one is Alexandria, and one is called Ir HaHeres. One of the cities is called Ir HaHeres, city of Heres. What does city of Heres means? Which city is that? My Ir HaHeres Yemelachas, because in the Targum of Yosef, as of Yosef translates to Aramaic, Karta de Beishemesh de Osid Lemechrav Isamar Hi Chodam in Hoyd. A city that is called Beit Shemesh. It's not Beit Shemesh that's in Eretz Yisrael. This is the Beit Shemesh of Egypt. Whatever. There's a city called Beit Shemesh that will eventually be destroyed. Umimai dir Heres, and Heres is a lashon of destruction. Okay. How do I know the word Heres means? I'm sorry. Ir Heres is actually Beit Shemesh. How do I know the word Heres means the sun? It says that they say about the sun, Cheres, and Ches and Hey could be interchangeable. Okay. All right. Now that we mentioned, I guess, Mitzrayim and Golus, we're going to talk about other drushes. The pasuk says, "Haviani benoi merachik ubenoi sai miktei haaretz." Bring my sons from afar and my daughters from the ends of the earth. There's a reference to Golus being called a son and being called a daughter. What is that a reference to? Apparently the Gemara feels that younger sons are more calm than younger girls. They're more worried. Younger boys are more maybe physically crazy, but mentally they're just chill, and girls are a little bit more stressed. So the reference of the Golus being a boy means a more calm Golus. The reference of a Golus being a girl is a more stressful Golus. So the Gemara says, Heviu b'nai merachak amravhuna elu Goliah shel Bavel. That's a reference to Bavel. Bavel was, apparently they were better to Klal Yisrael than other situations. So it was a reference to being a boy, because they were more calm to Klal Yisrael. They daitim yishevas lein kabanim. Klal Yisrael had more yishav adas when we were in Bavel. Ubenoisa miktei haaretz elu Goliah shel shararotas. But the other exiles historically ein daitim yishevas lein kabanis. Klal Yisrael was more difficult for Klal Yisrael. We didn't have the yishav adas. We were more stressed, and that was more compared to younger girls. Amar Rav Abar Yitzchak Amar Rav Chizda Amar Lo Amar Yehuda Merav Mitzur vad Kartini. In Galus, from the city of Tsur until Kartigini, Markir Nes Yisrael v'Savim Sheshamayim. They recognize Hashem, they recognize Klal Yisrael, and therefore they're always good to us in those cities. But Mitzur Klapi Ma'ariv, from Tzur to the west, Umekagdinik Klapi Mizrach, and from Kardinik to the east, in Makir Nes Yisrael v'Savim Sheshamayim. They don't recognize Klal Yisrael's greatness, they don't recognize Hashem, and it's more difficult. Again, all these things are darshan da b'derech drush. Eisvei Rav Shimi bar Chiya l'Rav. Rav Shimi bar Chiya says to Rav, I have a question. You're telling me that there are different locations. Some locations recognize Hashem's greatness and they're kind to us in Golus. Some locations not. But doesn't the pasuk say Mimizrach Hashemesh v'ad mevoy Godel Shmi b'goyim, that the entire world, Hashem's name is great. Ubechol makom muktar mukshi l'shmi u'minchak Torah. Every place you'll find karbonas being burnt for Hashem. So how could you say there are some places that don't recognize Hashem's greatness? Isn't there? The pasuk says everywhere recognizes Hashem. So this was the question that Rav Shimi Barashi asked. Rechim Bachia. So Amrele Shimiat, you're the great Shimi I heard so much about. What type of shaila is this? It's a very obvious answer. The whole world recognizes Hashem's greatness, but I thought we just said that some places don't. No, there's different madrigas. There's recognizing Hashem is Hashem, but then there's recognizing that Hashem is intimately involved in your life. That not every nation recognizes. They all recognize, the Gemara says, Dekarle Elikah Delikah. All the nations recognize that Hashem is the God of gods. They recognize that Hashem created the world and is in charge of everything above. But to know that Hashem is intimately involved in your life and there's no other deities in between, there's no Trinity, all these achin, that not everyone recognizes. B'chol Mokoim, now the Gemara, we mentioned this pasuk that in the entire world you'll always find every location has karbanis for Hashem. Says the Gemara, I don't think that's true. You won't find where there are karbanis in Canada and in Mexico and America. Where are karbanis? Says the Gemara, B'chol Mokoim muktar mukshel l'shmi b'chol Mokoim sagadayich. We find karbanis everywhere. What are you talking about? Says the Gemara, Amar Shuv Bar Nachmeni. This is not a reference to a classic carbon. This is a reference to Talmidei Chachamim that are oisik in Torah b'chol makom, that there are Talmidei Chachamim scattered throughout the whole world. And when they learn Torah, it's as if the carbon is brought before me. The pasuk then says regarding Galus, mincha tahira, regarding these Talmidei Chachamim, they're a pure mincha. Zaloi mitayra b'tahara. This is someone who learns Torah with a purity of mind. That someone who gets married and then you learn Torah, so you don't have the Yetzer Hara. Now that we mention this, we're going to mention more drashas about Liman Torah and the Beis Hamikdash v'chulei. Shir Hamalas, Hine Baruch Hu Es Hashem Kol Avdi Hashem Ha'oin Beis Hashem B'Leilos. That it says Shir Hamalas, they bless Hashem in the house of Hashem, in the Beis Hamikdash at night. What do you mean in the Beis Hamikdash at night? Nothing goes on at night. It sounds like from this pasuk that there's in the Beis Hamikdash, there's saying Berchas Hashem, Berchas Kayanim, or whatever brachos at night. In the Beis Hamikdash at night is when everything sort of stopped. So nothing goes on at night. It says the Gemara, my Baleilos. What do you mean Baleilos? The Beis Hamikdash did not have service at night. So Amrav Yechanan Elu Talmidei Chachamim Ha'oske B'Torah Baleilos. This is a reference to Talmidei Chachamim who learn Torah at night. And Maila Alei and Akasav Kilo Asukim B'Avoda. That when the pasuk says that it's as if they're in the Beis Hamikdash, it means that when someone learns Torah at night, whatever makom they are, it's Kilo. You're in the Beis Hamikdash bringing Avoda. Then the pasuk says L'Olam Zois Al Yisrael. The pasuk says this will be for the Jewish people forever. Amrav Gidol Merav Ze Mizbeach Banoi Umichal Sarat Godol Oimed Umakrav Karbonoi. This is a reference to. It implies that this service of Hashem is forever. What do you mean service of Hashem forever? We haven't had a Beis Hamikdash for 2,000 years. It says the Gemara in Shemayim there's a Beis Hamikdash. The Mizbeach Banoi, there's a Mizbeach in Shemayim. Umichal Sarat Godol Oimed Umakrav Karbon, and Michal is sitting bringing karbonis, whatever this means in Shemayim. That's what it means forever. So even though there's no physical Beis Hamikdash, the spiritual Beis Hamikdash exists beyond time. Rabbi Yochanan has a different mahalach. He says, "Elu Talmidei Chacham Asukim Behilchas Avoda Ma'ila Aleim Ki Yakasav Ki L'Nibna Hakadosh B'Yamav." This is going to bring us into the concept that when you learn Torah about a certain topic, it's as if you did it, and therefore, when it says that the mizbeach will be constantly used forever, the first mahalach is that it's in Shemayim. Or no, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's a mizbeach in Shemayim. It means every time people learn Maseches Menachos or Zvachim or the concept of karbanis, it's Ki'ilu a carbon was brought in Shemayim. The Gemara says, Amrish Lakish, another mahalach, Maidich Siv. What does it mean in the pasuk Zois? This is one of the most famous Gemaras. Zois Torah la'oila la'mincha v'lachatas v'lasham. This is the law What do it mean? What does it mean? This extra pasuk. What does it teach me? This is the law of the oila, the chatas, the mincha. Anyone who learns Torah, it's as if you brought these karbanos. Amar Rava, slightly different approach. Instead of learning Torah, it means like this: if it was telling me that learning Torah is ki'ilu you brought an oila, then it wouldn't say la oila, la mincha. It would just say oila mincha. What does it mean? La oila la mincha? What it means is, if you learn Torah, you won't need an oila. Karbanos are brought to atone for sins. If you learn Torah, you won't need any atonement because it'll perfect you. Last mahalach, I think this is probably the most famous one of all. Rav Yitzchak Maidich Siv Zois Teres Achatas Zois Teres Asham Kol Oisik B'Teres Chatas Kilu Hikav Chatas Kol Oisik B'Teres Asham Kilu Hikav Asham. If you learn the laws of a Chatas and the laws of the Asham, it's as if you brought the Chatas and you brought the Asham. Zok the Mishnah, the last Mishnah in Maseches Menachos tells us Nemar Ba'oilas Behema. We find that the same lashon was used by all karbanos. It says by an oilas behema, a big cow, Ishe Reich Nichayach. And it says by a small bird, and by a bread offering, it's the same lashon. What does it teach you? It teaches you Hashem doesn't care about amounts, He cares about your heart. You could bring a cow or you could bring a bird, as long as your intention is pure, meaning if you're bringing a cow because you're not interested and you're just wealthy, Hashem doesn't care for that. But if you bring a cow because that's what you can afford, and then there's another person that all they could afford is a bird, but they're doing it l'shem shemayim, it's the same lashon. In shemayim, it's echad amarbe, whether you do a lot, echad amamit, whether you do a little, all Hashem wants is your heart. The Gemara continues, Amar Rav Zera Maikra. What does it mean in the pasuk? It says, Metuka shnas ha'oved, sweet is the sleep of those that serve in the Beis HaMikdash, im ma'at ve'im harbe ye'ochel. Whether he eats a little or whether he eats a lot, it doesn't matter. Meaning, the simple pshat of pasuk is that if you eat a little, you eat a lot in the basement, you're going to sleep anyway. So what is it a reference to? Ravad barav amar mahocha. I'm sorry. So that's the source. That it's whether it's a little or a lot. That's the source that whether you do a little or a lot, you're still eating. It's in the eyes of Hashem. It's a meal. He says a different source. Barabos hatoiba rovu achleha umakishron lebaleha. The pasuk said, as the amount increases, those that consume it are happy, but what does the master care? What it's a reference to, Rashi explains, is that the kehanim care about how big the carbon is, because they're the ones eating it. Hashem's not eating it anyway, He doesn't care. What's the answer? Hashem wants to show that your devotion. So you could show that devotion, whatever you could afford, whether it's big or a little. The Gemara says, Hashem's like, I'm not eating it anyway. It's just a matter of showing where your machshava is. Just to finish up the Masechta, Tanya Rav Shimon ben Azai, Borei Maksiv b'Parshas HaKarbanos. Look at the pasuk in Karbanos. Shleinemar behen loikel v'loi elikim el Hashem. Always by the psukim, it doesn't say different names of Hashem. It's always Yud Kei Vav Kei. Why? Shleilitan pischein pele bal din lachlik. This is just agav. Because if you have different names of Hashem, you don't want someone, God forbid, that's a kaifer reading the psukim implying there's different gods. Oh, there's the God of the Mincha, and there's the God of the Asham, and there's the God of the Chatas. If you have different names of Hashem, people are going to start saying, oh, there's the Elikim is into animals. Yud Kei Vav Kei, it's always Yud Kei Vav Kei. It's all, which is Haya Hayviyah, which is Kulei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Also Yud Kei Vav Kei is Rachamim, which shows you all Karbanos, even the Karbanos that seem difficult are all Rachamim. Now the Brisa mentions what we say in the Mishnah. Nemar Bashar Hagas, it says regarding the big bull, very expensive bull, Ishe Reich Nichoch. U'ba'oif Hadak, and regarding a small bird, Ishe Reich Nichoch. U'bemincha, and regarding a simple bread, Ishe Reich Nichoch. Lo Melach to teach you, Echad Amarbe, Echad Amamit, V'achachab L'Shamayim. Doesn't matter whether you bring a bull or whether you bring humble bread, as long as your heart is in the right place. And you might think, I'm not sure what this means, but you might think Hashem needs the korban to eat, and therefore if I bring a smaller animal, Hashem's not eating as much. God forbid. Hashem says, even if I were hungry, would I have not tell you the entire world is mine? Meaning Hashem supplies the food. He doesn't need us. Mine is the beast of all the forest, the cattle of 1,000 mountains. Meaning Hashem saying, I'm the one who made all this. I don't need you. Am I going to eat the flesh of the bulls or drink the blood of the goats? Eser ritzaynoi v'yaser ritzaynii. Lo ritzaynii atem zayvchem, el ritzayinchem atem zayvchem. You're not doing this for me to eat. You're doing this for you, because that way you have a schus to have a closeness to Hashem. Shnemer litzaynchem tizbechuhu. You shall slaughter to fulfill your will. Davar achar, another pshat, litzaynchem tizbechuhu, litzayim zivchu, l'daitchem zivchu. Last mahalach, and this is going to take us to the end of the daf. It could be litzaynchem is not to do it, that it should be the ratzon of, that it should be the Pashas, it means that it's for our will. What it means is, it gives us an opportunity to come close to Hashem. But he's saying, no, l'daitchem, which is that when you shech the carbon, halachically, you have to know what you're doing. If you're just swinging the knife around, and you happen to cut through the esophagus and the windpipe, you're not going to be yotzet. L'daitchem, you have to have das.
You switch from homiletics to halacha.
Yeah. We're back to the end of it. You have to have awareness. Shmuel meravhuna, as Shmuel once asked Ravhuna, menayla mesasik. Mesasik means you don't even know what you're doing. You're just swinging a knife around, or you're picking up a knife to hand somebody, and you happen to shecht an animal on your way. How do I know shu puzzle that if you shecht a carbon that way, it's puzzle because you need das. Shenemar v'shachar es ben habakar shetei shchita l'shem ben bakar. You have to know that you're shechting an animal. So that's one source, but if we've done this long enough to know that for something in Kodshim, you have to have two sources. One to say lahalacha, and one is to say ma'akiv, that if you don't do it, you're not yoitze. So you have one source, but I need a second source. Zubi Adenu. He said to Shmuel, I already have this pasuk. I need a second pasuk. La'akiv v'nayin. Where's the second pasuk to tell me that if I shecht without realizing I'm shechting, not only am I missing a lichachila, I'm not yotze at all. You have to shecht it with das, knowing what you're doing. Mazel tov, everybody.